after months lampooning President Joe Biden as a cognitively impaired brain-dead zombie who can't finish a sentence or navigate off a stage. Former President Donald Trump and his campaign are changing their tune days ahead of the critical debate of the election. The commander-in-chief has suddenly morphed into a worthy debater, someone of considerable ability and a veteran political performer who is not to be underestimated, according to Trump and his lieutenants. The game of pre-debate expectation setting is often absurd. One aide to former President George W. Bush once claimed that John Kerry, his Democratic opponent in 2004, was a better debater than Roman rhetorician Cicero. But the Trump team's shift is remarkable given their relentless assault on Biden's faculties. And it hints at their possible concerns that they've set an unnecessarily low bar for the president's performance ahead of Thursday's clash hosted by CNN in Atlanta. North Dakota Gov. Doug Burgum, a possible Trump vice presidential pick, tried to reset the balance on CNN's State of the Union on Sunday. The guy's run for office more than a dozen times. He's run for president 4 times. He's been campaigning since President Nixon was in office, he said. This guy has got the ability. Trump is also hedging against a stronger-than-expected Biden showing by suggesting his opponent will be jacked up on drugs to ensure a strong performance. The Biden campaign, meanwhile, is intensifying its new attempt to portray Trump as an unhinged criminal who is morally reprobate, out to benefit his rich friends and unfit for a return to the Oval Office. The president's campaign, which is marking the 2nd anniversary of Roe v. Wade's reversal this week and making abortion a key election issue, promised in a memo Sunday that the head-to-head would finally show voters the contrast Biden believes will disqualify Trump. Thursday's debate will be one of the first moments of this presidential campaign where a larger slice of the American electorate will have the opportunity to witness the stark choice between Joe Biden, who is fighting for the American people, and Donald Trump, who is fighting for himself as a convicted felon with an unhinged campaign of revenge and retribution, Campaign Communications Director Michael Tyler wrote. A moment that could define the campaign and America's future as outlandish claims and pregame spin reflect the vital importance of the debate, with the rematch between Biden and Trump neck and neck just over 4 months from Election Day. The showdown comes amid bitterness between the rivals, especially in the wake of Trump falsely claiming that he won the 2020 election. The shadow of Trump's criminal conviction and his sentencing in New York next month is adding an extra level of tension at a time when the ex-president is threatening to use a second term to exact revenge against his enemies and, as Biden warns Trump will destroy democracy. Trump's use of his weekend events as warm-ups contrasts with Biden's measured approach. The president is sequestered at Camp David in Maryland with a large team of aides and debate experts preparing for a meeting with Trump that could define his re-election bid. Millions of voters on Thursday will have a chance to assess the energy, endurance, and mental sharpness of an 81-year-old president who has visibly aged and slowed in office, as polls show most Americans think he's too old to serve another term. Fewer voters worrying about the cognitive health of Trump, who is only 3 years younger at 78. But the ex-president's brash behavior, attacks on the judicial system and facts, and admiration for foreign dictators, which delight his supporters, often alienate swing state suburban voters who are likely to decide the next president. But the debate cuts deeper than personalities. Voters hurting from years of high prices and craving the return to the full pre-pandemic normality that Biden promised 4 years ago will be waiting to hear how the candidates can ease the economic pressure bearing down on their families. Biden's campaign is signaling he will present himself as a force of stability addressing the needs of families that contrasts with Trump's dark vision and the GOP's threats to abortion rights. The ex-president is, meanwhile, lambasting Biden as blind to a southern border crisis and what he claims are cities scarred by crime, while trying to conjure nostalgia for the Trump economy before the COVID-19 crash. Trump's change of tone. Trump appeared in Washington, D.C., at a conference of Christian conservatives on Saturday before heading to Philadelphia, seeking to seize back a state Biden won in 2020 and without which either man may struggle to get to 270 electoral votes. He mocked Biden for going to a log cabin to study, prepare, and claimed the president was sleeping at Camp David because they want to get him good and strong. So a little before debate time, he gets a shot in the asterisk. Trump added, "I say he'll come out all jacked up, right?" The presumptive GOP nominee's suggestions of chemical intervention mirrored his response to Biden's barnstorming State of the Union address earlier this year when a fired-up president made a mockery of conservative media expectations. that he'd stumbled during the speech and instead countered their narrative of mental decline. Trump tempered earlier assessments of Biden's likely performance in an interview with the All In podcast released Thursday. He beat Paul Ryan, Trump said, referring to the vice presidential debate in 2012 when Biden dispatched Republican nominee Mitt Romney's running mate. "I'm not underestimating him," Trump said. "I assume he's going to be somebody that will be a worthy debater." Burgum also sought to manage expectations on State of the Union in a way that appeared to undercut the Trump campaign's long-held position that Biden is no longer fit to serve as president. "When he needs to, he can step up," he told Caitlin Collins. "This guy has got the ability, and we've seen it. We've seen him in debate for years ago. We've seen him in the State of the Union this year, that when he needs to, he can step up." Burgum's assessment is inconsistent with the ex-president's portrayal of his rival in even some of his most recent appearances. In the key battleground state of Wisconsin last week, for instance, Trump said of Biden, he can't find his way off a stage ever. After conservative media highlighted deceptively edited video of Biden at the G7 summit in Italy this month, Trump spokesperson Karoline Leavitt accused the president of wandering around like a brain-dead zombie and of putting cognitive decline on full display. CNN senior political commentator David Axelrod said on State of the Union that the Trump campaign's reversal had been fun to watch. He noted Trump spent the last 5 years describing Biden as utterly incompetent, to the point where, if Biden arrives and leaves under his own power, that would be a triumph. "I think they have recognized in the last couple of weeks, whoa, this guy is going to exceed those expectations, and we'd better start creating a rationale for him having a decent night." A magnifying glass on the choice, former president has insisted he won't be participating in mock debates, though he has held what were described as policy forums with Republicans, including Florida Sen. Marco Rubio, another potential vice presidential contender. There is growing speculation about Trump's approach after his hyper-aggressive and angry performance in the first debate against Biden in 2020 backfired. South Dakota Gov. Kristi Noem had some advice for the ex-president on NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday. "I don't think he has to get personal in this debate at all, because he's going to have so many good things to talk about, in contrast with Joe Biden's policies," she said. Unlike Trump, who spent the weekend creating headlines, Biden hunkered down at the presidential retreat in Catoctin Mountain Park, north of Washington. At his side were former White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain, who has been prepping Democrats for presidential debates for a generation, and other long-term loyalists including Mike Donilon, Bruce Reed, Anita Dunn, and Steve Ricchetti. Former Obama White House counsel and Biden's personal attorney, Bob Bauer, who sources said was likely to reprise his role playing Trump in debate prep, was also on hand. In its memo, the Biden campaign said that Team Biden-Harris is putting a magnifying glass on the choice this week as Democrats in Atlanta and across the country organize around this moment. The comparison on show even before the debate epitomizes the rivals' opposite approaches to the presidency. Trump is public, abrasive, profane, and as ever flouting the expectations of traditional statesmanship. Biden is conventional, cautious, and seeking to restore the norms that Trump once trashed. Several top Democrats have issued stark warnings to President Joe Biden's camp, urging them to spend more time going directly after former President Donald Trump and less time, if any, pointing to the president's policy record. The reason is simple: talking about Biden's policy achievements is not resonating with voters. He wants the credit, but it's not working. One top Democrat, who recently shared these concerns with the campaign, said of Biden, "He needs to stop." Speaking on the condition of anonymity to describe private conversations with the campaign, for sources close to the White House said they've urged the Biden camp to go on offense on the economy, using the time on the debate stage to challenge Trump's cozy relationship with corporate America and the inflationary nature of his proposed policies. Biden and Trump square off in the first presidential debate at 9 p.m. On Thursday live on CNN. The behind-the-scenes warnings echo concerns raised by Biden's longtime aide, Ron Klain, Biden's first chief of staff, who is also prepping the president for Thursday's debate in lasagna-fueled sessions at Camp David. Earlier this year, Klain reportedly remarked to a private crowd that Biden was spending too much time praising bridges that were being built instead of connecting with voters. The White House at the time denied that Klain's views were a departure from their strategy. Klain gets it, one of the sources said of the former chief of staff, who is taking vacation from his job as Airbnb's chief legal officer to return to a role as debate coach. That's a departure for Biden, a lifelong politician who has grown accustomed to seeking credit when he feels credit is due, especially as the list of accomplishments has grown longer. His frustration when he feels that credit is withheld can be apparent. During a May interview in Racine, Wisconsin, where Biden had just announced a multi-billion-dollar investment at a site where a similar pledge under Trump had not materialized, Biden visibly bristled when asked why voters still preferred his predecessor's economic policies, and whether he could turn that sentiment around. "We've already turned it around. The polling data has been wrong all along," Biden told CNN's Erin Burnett, challenging the suggestion that economic output had been lower than expected and pointing to job creation as proof the US has the best economy in the world. "This election," the sources who spoke to CNN argued, "is different than any other re-election race Biden has run. While the US economy has defied predictions of a recession, instead producing blockbuster job growth and output, that strength has driven up prices for consumers and businesses. To staunch that, the Federal Reserve has raised interest rates, making borrowing to buy a car or house much more expensive, too. As a result, the economy has become both the biggest priority for voters and their biggest frustration with the incumbent president." An ABC News Ipsos poll in May found more than 80% of respondents said the economy and inflation were important in determining their vote, and on both issues, Trump notched a 14-point lead over Biden. In a CNN poll out in late April, Biden's approval ratings for the economy 34% and inflation 29% remained starkly negative, as voters said economic concerns were more important to them when choosing a candidate than they were in each of the past two presidential contests. In early June, the Biden re-election campaign rolled out a new ad in battleground states in both English and Spanish, highlighting Biden's working-class roots and his familiarity with the working-class struggle. And in recent months, he has backed away from boasting about Bidenomics and begun to embrace messaging that there is more work to do, acknowledging that his policies haven't fully solved the economic woes of the post-pandemic era. And on Tuesday, Biden's re-election campaign seized on the final countdown to Thursday night's highly anticipated CNN presidential debate by arguing that a second Trump presidency would do nothing to help the middle class. Donald Trump loves to attack Joe Biden because he's focused on revenge and he has no plan to help the middle class. The narrator says in a newly released ad that as part of what the Biden campaign says is a $50 million paid media campaign targeting battleground voters in June. The ad goes on to say that Biden worked to cap the cost of insulin, lower health care costs, and made big corporations pay their fair share, a list that the Biden White House and campaign has frequently touted in recent months as having helped lower and middle-class Americans. Biden, too, has targeted shrinkflation, the moniker for paying the same price for a good that's gotten smaller, joking to an audience of hospitality leaders in February that the size of Snickers had gone down 10%. But the price is still the same. But his natural proclivity has been to try to convince people they should feel better about the economy by using the data that supports that view. Imagine spending 50 years of your life in politics and now becoming the guy. "You want people to know you're doing a really good job," one major donor told CNN. "I think Biden can't help but talk about what a good job he's done.